I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst. On the program, do you feel carbon pricing works?
I'm not against it.
I'm very against it.
Whatever it takes, whatever it takes.
You pay, but you get good out of it.
But first, as we begin 2022, many of us hope to see a stark difference in what we witnessed over the last 24 months or so. Every year brings a new beginning, and with that, a new optimism. So, to begin a new year, we took this question to Canadians.
What are your hopes for Canada this year?
My biggest hope is that we address climate change in a more responsible and intentional way, and that we listen to Indigenous community members for cues on how to do that.
Keep it up, I guess. I'd like to maybe see something done about rising housing costs. I don't know. That's what comes to mind.
What I expect from Canada right now is like get rid of that COVID-19 thing. Little thing we've been hearing a little bit about, and they could invest in sports and art. I think that would motivate the next generation.
I hope they going to make good decisions about the climate and environment and things like this. You know, just the future for the Canada.
Environment is the most important issue for you?
Yeah.
Why?
And for everybody, I guess, because we're all concerned about it.
Maybe just to move on about the whole pandemic situation. We had to move on to do something about it. Better than this year's, I guess.
2022, I hope, is going to be a peaceful year, and that the COVID pandemic will be completely over. No more distanciation, and we can all be back to work and like the good old days.
I hope they handle things a little better, as in like COVID laws. I feel like we don't have enough freedom like most countries do, and pretty much like anything that goes around, like it's not real settled well. The government, they don't do enough. I feel like it's not enough they do. I don't see people happy. It's not really going well.
My hopes would be for Canada to take the environmental issues more seriously, to really try and diminish the plastic consumption we have. Also, I guess the Native Americans over here, there's a lot of issues with the pipelines and all of that I think their voices should be more heard.
End of COVID. Way more attention to climate issues because they're right here, right now. We need to deal with it. There's a deadline, and we've passed it, so that's important. Proper labor laws, so people are paid for their work properly. So none of this charity stuff. Like, people earn money, and they should have, more than a living wage, be able to afford their their housing, all of that, like food, housing, supporting your children.
I think just the hopes for Canada is for us to kind of pull out of this whole COVID scenario that we went through, thinking, like with hope moving forward, because I think it's been really tough for many people all the way around, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's just hope moving forward.
I hope that Canada stays positive and can put things in perspective of what all the issues that are going on, and maybe that some of the fear-mongering and terror will settle down a little bit. People will be a little bit more positive.
I hope we get out of the pandemic. Get our economy on track, life on track, go back to normal.
That there is the unemployment is improved, there's more jobs available, that poverty is reduced, and that we have good weather.
Recovery. In all aspects, social, emotional, psycho, health-wise, just recovery, wellness and recovery.
Well, I hope that COVID rules and regulations and incidents of COVID will be decreased, and we'll get back to more of a normal existence like we've had before. And again, I hope that the standard of living improves for people and homelessness is reduced.
Well, I hope that we'll come out of this pandemic soon, and hope that Justin Trudeau doesn't quit or anything. That's all I can think of at the moment. And I also hope that things will work out with the Truth and Reconciliation front.
Oh, I hope that the pandemic will end and that we'll be able to do what we like to do, go out, enjoy with our friends. So I hope that's the last phase of the pandemic.
So I hope that Canada can get back to some type of normal and that the kids can go back to school and that, yeah, we can all kind of see our friends again and our family again.
I haven't seen the world really come together and work together during this pandemic, really. It's kind of been like a pit all or state all, like everyone's fighting each other over what we should all think about it, what we should all do about it. I'd just like to see people start to maybe work together rather than pit all these extremities against each other.
No more COVID. And also not so much hype on variants and everything, you know. It's becoming so mild that people don't die from it, you know, and so why make such a fuss? I see businesses closing. It's so sad. It's too much.
I hope we come through the pandemic on the other side. Kind of frustrated with the new closures right now. My boyfriend works in restaurants, so I'm really hoping that restaurants will reopen soon and that he can go back to work as normal and that it won't affect us as much anymore.
I guess my hope would be that we get the COVID situation under control, just get everyone vaccinated. I think that's probably the more important thing right now.
I wish for a better economy. I think that is something. Our government has done lots of things, but I think there's a lot of other things they can do. Both governments, both the provincial and the federal and what have you. I wish that everybody has a bit happier year maybe than last year.
Carbon pricing, also known as a carbon tax, is a levy put on greenhouse gas emissions. In other words, those who pollute pay. For the average consumer, we see the results of this not only at the gas pumps, but also in our day-to-day purchases. But this system also has opponents who claim carbon pricing does nothing whatsoever to help. So we took to the streets to see what you think. Our question:
how do you feel about carbon pricing?
Well, I think we need to do whatever we can to improve the environment, reduce pollution, and help with climate change. And whatever it takes, we all have to put in an effort, and carbon tax may be one of the alternatives that we use. And I'm for it if we have to do it that way.
I'm not against it. I think it's something that we have to take this into account because global warming is a thing, and the carbon we put out in the air, we need to make account for that sort of thing, and we should make it incentivized where we use other forms where it doesn't emit the carbon. So I'm not against it.
I'm prepared to pay quite a bit to reduce the pollution that we have, whether it's done through carbon pricing or some other sort of tax. That's okay because we have to improve the environment.
I think it's a good idea. Why? Just to rein in emissions.
I feel like it's like basically like a cost to average people. Like it's like the people paying for it is you're driving to work or you're buying food. Like it's I'm always surprised it even took off. Like it seems like the most regressive tax possible. So I generally am against it, but also I'm fascinated it was like even like acceptable in the first place. Like it sounds like the opposite of generally taxation we do.
Asia, I travel couple country in Malaysia and Singapore, and a lot of pollution there, especially in China. Like it's always India as well, and that's make a lot of damage of Africa. So the African people, they don't. So who's responsible for that?
At least it's a penalty that they have to pay, at least it's a measure. So I agree with it, but I just don't think that it's going to be able to really help that much because big companies can't afford to pay that.
From what I gather, it seems it's a step in the right direction again, but it's not enough. I mean, it's not a real solution. You don't need to tax carbon, you need to stop emitting it.
Well, I mean, it's for the environment. It's for better. You pay, but you get good out of it. I see it being not so bad. I mean, it's better for the environment, I find. So yeah.
No, I don't think we should be taxed. The carbon tax, I'm totally against that. I think that's exaggerating the human freedoms and rights of what to do and how to live. I'm very against it.
I guess it affects me because if it makes gas prices go up, then that, I would say, like, for a lot of people right now, that's a big issue. So, yeah, if it continues to go up, I think it's just going to force people to start just commuting or just start investing into an electric car or something like that. Like gas-powered cars are going to kind of fade away. So.
We're driving an electric car, actually, so we're not in effect, and we're happy to be driving an electric car for that exact reason.
We all know that there has to be some drastic changes. There has to be, because what is happening now with the warming of our planet and what have you. Whatever it takes, if it is carbon, I don't have a problem. I have a car, I pay whatever I have to pay for the gasoline. I don't have a problem with it, quite frankly.
Carbon pricing, well, I mean, they're taxing everything. They're taxing everything we do, everything we use to try and help the environment, I guess. If that's what they're doing with it, great. Besides that, I don't think we have much of a choice,
Who did Brian Mulroney defeat in the 1984 election to become Prime Minister? Pierre Trudeau, John Turner, Jean Chrétien. So Trudeau, Turner, or Chrétien?
Turner.
Chrétien.
Turner?
I want to say Chrétien.
Turner? I think it was Turner.
It was Turner. Very good, sir. You may go.
All right.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
In 1984, Brian Mulroney was the Progressive Conservative Party's new leader, succeeding Joe Clark. In 1984, John Turner succeeded Pierre Trudeau, becoming the new Prime Minister and Liberal Party leader. In July of that year, Turner called an election, although he could have put it off until 1985. After a hard-fought summer campaign, on September 4th, 1984, Brian Mulroney's Progressive Conservatives won a landslide victory with 211 out of 282 seats, defeating Turner's Liberals and making Mulroney Canada's 18th Prime Minister.
We've seen our hospitals become overwhelmed during COVID-19, which paints a stark picture of our universal healthcare system. As pandemic waves come and go, the strain that it puts on our healthcare workers has been a cause for concern. We ask Canadians what ideas they have to make things better for our healthcare workers and for us. Our question:
how would you improve Canada's healthcare system?
I think we could do something about the doctor shortage. I mean, certainly have one of those in Quebec at least. I know they make it very difficult to become a doctor. If you come from abroad, for instance, they'll make you go to medical school again, even if you're already trained. So they could do something about that.
I say more has to go into it, more healthcare workers, more people taking their time to work, but also giving people the rest they need. But I mean, it all goes through who they allow working, because it's all who they allow to work. I feel like they need better service for the people.
I think the biggest issue with our healthcare system is the lack of attentiveness to patients in the multitude of their needs. I think that people oftentimes feel like they don't have the space or the time when accessing healthcare to address what they actually want to address. And I think mainly what I'm thinking about is psychological and mental health issues. I think that's something that people still don't have proper access to, and there isn't space in healthcare spaces to address those problems.
I would encourage people to get an education in the health and to stay in Canada rather than go to other places, so we can have more staff and just have more. I've been to hospitals during COVID for vaccines, and I saw that most of them are run down. And I think this is very important to modernize the hospitals and make it a good environment for both staff and patients, and make it more attractive for people to go into that field.
That's really tough, but I definitely do think that nurses, doctors need better pays, they need better conditions. They killed themselves over the last period of COVID and everything, and their jobs are really hard. So I really think that it needs to be more financed, because you cannot really ask them to work done many extra hours and everything for such little rewards.
More doctors and nurses being trained, because I think that there's people that have just left the profession, and I also like to see foreign doctors that it may be made a bit easier for them to practice in Canada. With the not starting from square one, but some kind of compacted retraining.
Well, I'm a healthcare worker, so I don't know, that's kind of hard to say. Definitely the wait times are excessive, and I think there's not enough funding for new doctors and new nurses coming in. So maybe if Canada would stop implementing new plans outside of healthcare and focus on that, where all of the stress is, that would be probably more beneficial to people like myself and to nurses that I work with who are exhausted and overworked and burnt out.
That's tough, because it's I guess if we can have a push to have more people interested in healthcare and wanting to get into nursing, get into just healthcare in general.
I think our medical system is doing fairly well under the circumstances.
Like, I've been waiting for an operation. They're telling me it's going to be at least 3 years before I can get the operation. So, the waiting times are horrific. I know my sister's waiting for some tests, and it's been months and delayed, mainly because of the COVID. So it's hard to tell right now with the COVID going on. But normally, in a normal time, I think they got to get their response times a little bit faster.
Well, I just moved to Quebec from 51 years here, and I find that to get into a clinic, it's almost impossible. You have to go through the emergency, which works perfectly, but it's very expensive that way. So I used to have easier service in Ontario, but maybe it's the adaptation. I don't know.
I think we have to sit down provincially, and that we have to see what's actually the problems. I think there is a lack of manpower in hospitals or different sectors of the health sector. So we need to see what we can do to encourage people to join the healthcare system and improve the work, maybe the salary also. So they are happy to work there,
I would allow private care as well, two-tier system. I think because it's strictly public, I don't think there's sufficient money to care for all of the needs, health needs, and I think at some point we have to pay more.
Funding for people who are disadvantaged. So people have access to our healthcare system. They can show up, they can receive treatment for their physical health issues or their mental health issues. But then what happens if you attend an acute care facility and you're stabilized from an acute care perspective, and then you need to transition to the community? We lack resources.
To be more accessible, I guess, for everyone. I feel like coming from Europe, everything is faster, more accessible. So there's more, I guess, equity as well. And that's the main difference, I guess. It's more expensive, it's less accessible. So yeah, there is a lot to do on this in this case.
Well, we need more efficiency. We have to reduce the wait times. They're terrible now, especially with COVID, because COVID is taking up so much of our space in hospitals. And we're going to have to do it some way, either through efficiencies or through a private-public system like many countries have around the world. You can still provide care for the people who don't have the means to pay for it, but there's lots of people who have the means that are willing to contribute, and I think we need to look at that, whether it's through an insurance scheme or some other way.
Statistics Canada has suggested that Canada's poverty rate has actually been in decline in recent years. But despite that, millions of Canadians still live below the poverty line, including in remote Indigenous communities. A pandemic can exacerbate the effects of poverty, especially for those who have nowhere else to turn. So, how can we fix this? Our question.
What more could be done to reduce poverty in Canada?
I would support a universal basic income. I think putting money in people's pockets is a better strategy than some social programs that we use that are made to build things up but may not actually do what they are intended on doing.
I think we need to distribute the wealth better. I think maybe some people are earning too much and some people not, and we are working hard. Everyone is working hard, but not getting maybe the money that they need. So if we can redistribute better the wealth of the country, I think it can improve.
More opportunities for those that aren't educated. A lot of different, startups, I would say, for people that don't have an education. I think that's the biggest, and more awareness for mental health and giving those people a job as well.
One of the main things is you look everywhere and there's people on the street. You look in places like Vancouver where there's tent cities. The States is just as bad. They've got to get the people some housing, affordable housing. Right now the price of housing is incredible. I don't see how our kids are going to be able to afford a house in the near future, because it's just what used to be $150,000 for a townhouse is $400,000 now. So if the people living off the street can't afford a room or an apartment or whatever, I mean, our kids are going to be next,
Better jobs for people, good paying jobs and things like that they can make a living and they can exist in the existence that we have, because everything is going up. You go into the store and you buy something in the grocery store. I come out with a basket that I can hold like this, and it's over $100. I mean, a lot of people, they just can't afford that. So something has to happen. I know the reasons for it. I'm aware of it, but, and I can pay it, but there's a lot of people that can't.
Well, I think obviously the most evident answer is to raise minimum wage. I think I heard 2 weeks ago that the minimum you need to make to live in Toronto is $22 an hour right now. I'm a student, I make $15, I'm from Toronto. There's a reason everyone's trying to leave and go around the GTA and get away from it, because it's hard to find jobs when you're a student trying to pay for that degree that's ultimately going to get you the job that you need to pay for what you need. So,
Stronger social safety net for people, more access to food, cheaper food, affordable housing for everybody.
More social programs, housing, transportation, I think more tax base to lower income Canadians.
Well, I think that housing can go down a little bit, it can become more affordable, and I think there can be a little bit more access to social services, but at the same time I think that we really need to invest in education and bring that cost down as well.
I think the first step would be to start with education. I think that definitely that's the key to increase wealth in the country and reduce poverty. So access to education, and then the system would give back, more also to everyone.
From my point of view, I definitely look at a lot of Indigenous issues and looking at sort of the disparity with Indigenous groups. I think that also, of course, being in Toronto, I think it's
it's a very different experience of seeing poverty or seeing homelessness or things like this, which I think being here so much, it would be interesting to understand kind of what poverty looks like in other parts of the country versus where it's very apparent, and where you think like more homeless shelters, better care for those getting back on their feet, things like that, like come to mind immediately.
I think more should be done to help the people that are on the streets to get back on their feet. I think that bias needs to be reduced when it comes to judging others before knowing their situation. So I think something that can impact the root of the problem rather than just supplementing some of the symptoms would be a good start, in my opinion. But yeah, something to help the people that are, at the lowest.
The price of everything's going through the roof. Maybe our Prime Minister or our leaders care a little bit more about economic policy, and they would have less people, being kicked out of their apartments every year, every month.
A lot more. Concretely, I wouldn't know exactly what to say, but there would be a lot more shelters that would be needed for sure. A lot more help to the Indigenous. That would be a big problem. So yeah, I'd say a lot more help, especially for Indigenous nations.
I think if everyone had access to a universal basic income, if people who are working jobs that are essential to the functionings of our society had access to a higher wage, so that most people were actually being paid wages that don't put them below the poverty line, that would be wonderful.
In Canada, I think they should invest in the mental health issue. There's tons of poor people in the street that should be in the hospital instead in the street because they got mental issues and stuff like that. Yeah, if they would put more money in that, I think that would probably reduce a little bit of people in the street and solve that problem.
I think it's great to dedicate money towards housing and programs, especially in the city where there's a lot of poverty, especially Milton Park area. But I think more needs to be done to address the underlying root causes of the issue.
I would say to reduce poverty, first of all, is to create jobs. This is like one of the main answers that I'm pretty sure everyone is answering. I know it's hard, but sometimes the most insignificant job could be significant to someone else, and they can end poverty and people being on the streets and everything. And I am 1,000,000% sure that Canada is capable of doing it. Since they can accept immigrants and refugees in their country, why don't you take care of your population first with the means that you already have, instead investing in the people coming outside of the country? I have nothing against them. Of course, I am an immigrant, thank you for helping me, but come on, let's think about our population first. So that's my opinion on this.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.